Welcome back, Golden Age of Gear, with Derek and myself, Joey Landreth, and we are talking about the Revv D25 amp, but not just any Revv D25, are we, Derek?
No, we are talking about the newest Artist Edition Revv D25, and that artist is probably the most well-known and best slide guitar player from all of Canada.
Well, it's definitely the only slide guitar player from Canada who's sitting next to you, that's for sure.
Correct. Joseph Sidney Landreth's Artist Edition of the D25.
So, Derek had approached me a few months ago and asked if I wanted to do a little collaboration project. Derek and I have been friends for a really long time, since 2015, 2016, something like that.
Yeah.
And he loaned me some amps for my first solo record, which wound up being used a ton. And over the years, I've used lots of different Revv amps. Like I used the, what was that really crazy heavy combo I used? The Dynamis.
The Dynamis combo.
Yeah, Dynamis combo, which sounded great, but was so heavy. Because I had the 210, and that thing was like a boat anchor.
You know, it's funny. I was talking about it last night with Chris Cadell, because I said I want to do another 210 combo, because the original Dynamis 740 210 sounded phenomenal, but it was 72 pounds.
It was so heavy. Yeah, it was heavier than a twin.
Like, so we need to revisit that, because something about the combination of the clean channel voice, which is very similar to like D40, D25, with those two ET10s from WGS just sounded really killer.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I say that so there's documentation on the internet that I can tell Dan, I'm like, well, I opened my big fat mouth, so now you have to now you have to work on this. But no, I've always loved how that 210 combo sounded. It was just that it was way too heavy. So yeah, I'd like to revisit it at some point. But yeah,
and I think you should.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I toured with one of those for a while, or two of those at one point. I've had D20s out on the road with me a whole bunch. I use them as my wet amps for a bunch of tours. I use them as like just a second amp in a 2-amp rig, and always love them. They're super reliable. Take pedals great. Are little tiny, the opposite of heavy.
Yes.
You could literally put it in a backpack. So they were just like a great touring solution. And then when the combo came out, I guess, which is it's not like a bigger version of the D20, is it? Or
no. So Sean helped us a lot, and him and Dan worked together and kind of revoiced it. And I remember you were actually the first player outside of Revv, like staff and Sean, to play the prototype of the D25,
right,
like probably just over 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
We were at No Fun Club, and you came down to try it out.
That's right.
And, you know, you and I kind of talked on and off. Like when the D25 actually came out, I was like, hey, you know, I could send one over for you to check out. But, you know, you still favored the D20 because the voicing is different. Like the D25 was a little more, I shouldn't say it's not toppy, but it had a different top end than the D20 did. So it still takes pedals incredibly well. But on one of your last tours, you had out a couple of 2-rock combos. And that's when I was like, hey, I want to get your actual like feedback on the D25 and on, you know, like what, now that you were using combos again instead of just heads and cabs. I was like, you know, let me get some feedback. And I think that's kind of what sparked the conversation of, well, here, check this out. And, you know, you kind of gave some feedback about like, well, for me, I would like it to be a little more open or a little bit more immediate. And I was like, you know what, let me talk to Dan to see whether or not we can do mods or whatever. And that kind of sparked the whole conversation of like, well, you had just done the Duesenberg thing where you had done it as a collab. So it's not technically like signature model. It's more just your input to build what you would like from that type of gear. And that's when we kind of started talking about this.
Yeah, totally. And it's I like this kind of collaboration a lot because it's more of like it feels more collaborative than it does like this is what I want. You know, we're starting from a platform that already works.
Yes.
And making little tweaks. And so there's things for me that like so many amplifiers do sort of like almost endemically. Like we go into playing a guitar amp for what it sounds like when you play by yourself.
Yes.
And so much of the time, there are certain things that I'm doing to an amplifier that, you know, when you play it by itself, it doesn't sound as good. But when you play it in the band, it sounds a lot better.
Yeah.
So there was a couple of little tweaks that we made to this to kind of help that sort of happen a little quicker. Yeah, and then the voicing stuff. But really, there's not a whole lot
No,
done.
like on a component level, I don't know exactly what it is, but I know that, you know, there's some resistors that are different. I think there's some capacitors that are different. The other big difference is this has a G12H75 creamback in its stock instead of the vintage 30 because it's, you know, like a more kind of rounder sound, you know, to use buzzwords, it's not quite as harsh as a V30 is.
Yeah. Which I know why a lot of people really like V30s, but I think it's not even that I don't like V30s. It's just that I've played through, I don't know, 100 V30s in my life.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, I'm excited to hear different speakers.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what drove that decision. Another big thing are these switches.
Yes.
Because the push buttons, I could never remember which was on or which was off.
Yes.
So it was like, is it on when it's in, or is it on when it's out? I could never remember. So I like the toggle switches.
Yes. That, and you also have been building your own amps for fun at home for the last year and a bit, maybe?
Yeah, a year or two, yeah.
Yeah. And you were saying that you use a Joule, which we had always had, like, our logo will light up instead, but you were using a Joule, and that you told me, like, look, I buy a green Joule, but I get a blue light that goes inside, so it glows kind of like a tealish color. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool, because the original prototype of the D25 had a Joule in it, and we opted not to go with it because at the time they were really, really expensive to buy, and we were having a hard time sourcing, like, decent quantity. Like, it was okay if we were going to, like, next gen. I think it's next gen, isn't it? Yeah,
that's who I order lots of my parts from.
Where if you're buying like 1 to 10, all good, right? But when we wanted to order like 500 or 1,000, we were having a really hard time finding them where they weren't like, oh, this is going to be $14 per amp for a light, where an LED or some LEDs in behind a piece of plexi were like, this is 40 cents. And so there you hear it, folks. We didn't go with the Joule originally because it was too expensive. No, the real reason was a lot of our dealers had said, like, we like the fact that your logo lights up. That's kind of what you guys do. So we were like, okay, well, we got to find a way to do that, because we couldn't do like a glowing badge somewhere else on it without it looking stupid. But for this, because it's an artist edition, I was like, we don't need to do that. I'm like, we'll go with what, you know, with what you do.
Yeah.
And it looks classy, Joe.
Thanks. Yeah, I did. I bought like every Joule that Next Gen had and every LED to like find the right combo. Yeah. And when I saw that, because most of the amps that I've built so far are like brown face.
Yep.
And the teal with the brown looks really good.
Yeah.
So, and I think it turned out really, really great here. But do you want to hear some amp?
Yeah.
So this is kind of, most of the knobs are at noon. Here, there we go. Here it is.
Very nice. So for all of the nerds that want to know about, you know, power section and all of that stuff, it is the same, 6v6 power section that we've been using in D20, G20, D25 for the last, like 6 years, 7 years now. Same transformer set. Preamp is just ECC 83s or 12AX7s. Yeah. Pretty basic, has torpedo embedded reactive load box. So what you guys are hearing is not the amp live in the room. You guys are hearing the direct signal from it because it's a pain in the ass to mic it up if we're going to talk. There'll be some other videos that are probably already on the internet now that I say this, or whenever this episode comes out. It's probably out there already. where you can hear it through some mics. So
Yeah. I figured I'd step on a drive pedal so you can kind of hear what it does with the pedal in front of it.
sure. I see you have your you've got your reverb on too. Let's give them the reverb from the amp. And
Oh, okay.
So here's more.
No, sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else I can tell the people about it. There's two options that are available for Tolex colors. There's straight black. It still has we call it the black and tan cloth. So same grill cloth, but you can get it in black Tolex. But this is gold Tolex because all of Joey's stuff is gold. I love gold. The Golden Boy pedal, your Sorokin.
My Sorokin guitars, yeah.
So, and I was actually pleasantly surprised at like how close this gold actually ends up being to like that gold top or to your Sorokin. Like it's quite a bit closer than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah.
So,
I think it turned out great. I think it turned out really, really great. Very classy.
It's nice. Very nice.
Very nice.
Let's hear it. Let's put Fuzz on because everybody knows you for that.
Yeah.
There you go. So by the time this video is out, these amps will be available from fine Revv dealers all over the world, as well as our website. Yeah, it was a lot of fun going through this with you. I mean, the original concept for the D20, I built the idea, like Dan does all of our circuit design, so I'm in no way, shape, or form trying to say that I designed that amp, but the idea for the amp came from conversations with you, where I knew about the torpedo embedded. You didn't know about it at the time, but I knew that, okay, we could get this, reactive load built in and have an IR loader like from 2 Notes. And I remember talking to you because on the Whiskey record, the amp that you used was the Generator 740, which for those of you guys that aren't really familiar with Revv stuff, we have 2 lines. We have Generator and Dynamis. We're most known for the Generator. That's, the high gain metal thing. People know us for our purple channel or the G3 pedal, which is, really tight high gain stuff. The Dynamis was always meant to be like low to mid gain, really good pedal platform. Something that covered off, honestly, players like me that do way more playing at church than they do anywhere else now. And I need something that takes pedals really well and can do the edge of breakup, ambient, like the shimmer thing that you're such a huge fan of, to do those kind of tones. And I remember calling you and saying like, okay, so if we were going to build like a small amp, because I asked you what should we do, and you're like, do something 20 watts or under, and if you could make something that was lightweight, like that was possible to fly with, that you said that would be great. And I'm like, okay. And I remember asking you like, well, which clean channel would you use? Because when you were using the Generator, you just used the clean channel and use your pedal for your drives, or your pedal board, I should say. And you had said, oh, I would definitely go with the Dynamis clean. It takes pedals better. That's what you said you would go with. So I was like, okay. And I started working on the concept for the D20 and what it would be, based off of what you had said would be a good solution for being able to tour with. And its original intention for D20 was to be an amp that you could easily fly with. That's why it's only 9 pounds. And that, there's a lot of players like you that show up to festivals where you've flown in, the backline that's there is almost always pretty tired. And, you're kind of trying to pick like what's the best deluxe or deluxe reverb or blues, deluxe or DeVille that I could use and put my pedals into. And with the D20, I was like, this would be something that you could easily fly with, that, you know, you can run at least a great signal to front of house and get it back through your monitors or your in-ears, whatever you're using. And you could still plug in a cab on stage to have something to monitor on stage if you wanted. So that was kind of the concept for it. And then we had people asking us constantly, you know, can you build a combo again? Can you build a combo again? Because we discontinued the Dynamis combo because of the weight. I mean, even the 1x12, I think it was like 55 pounds for the 1x12 combo. Like, so just way too heavy. Our good friend, Jocelyn Gould, used it on one of her records. And she loved it. And she called me and was like, I would love to use your amps, but I physically can't lift it because she's small.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So then when the D20 came out, I was like, this is the solution for those people. But of course it didn't have speaker. So we started working on the D25, and Sean had some ideas about what should change in the top end, which I do think made a massive difference in, you know, just in how sparkly it sounds on its own. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun, like, you know, once we started talking about, okay, well, what would you change and like, what would you do? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think what ends up happening is you end up getting a little less roundness on the bottom and a little more forwardness in the sort of low mid. Like it's just ever so slightly a little bit different in that regard, and a little more immediate.
Yep.
And I kept going like between the D25 that I had, and I've got a great sort of like vintage Princeton clone, and I kind of kept going back and forth because I really love that little amp for exactly that, and was like, what about this do I really, really like that I feel like the D25 wasn't quite capturing?
Right.
And that was the main thing, was like this sort of Princeton vibe has a little more punch to it, which is a personal preference thing. Like, it's not better or worse.
Yes.
But to me, it was like, that's for my playing. I want just a little more smack.
Yep.
And I think this thing does it.
Awesome. Okay. Let's hear some more, and I'm going to twist some knobs so that people can hear kind of the range of stuff. And I'll show you, like right now, I'll turn the fuzz off.
Yep.
So let's go. This is straight in, nothing but amp. So right now, and I'll explain the switches real quick for anybody who cares. So there's gain boost, there's a pre-post, 5 watts or 25 watts, and then speaker load. So what those are, obviously the gain boost is pretty self-explanatory. Right now it's on. If I turn it off, it renders the gain pot useless, right? So then it's as clean as it's gonna get, right? Like, and we can see like kind of the sweep. It's got built-in digital reverb, so here's the reverb all the way up. Or off. So now that gain boost brings us in. This is my favorite. Like, I use the gain boost on either the D20 or on the D25s. It doesn't matter if I'm playing clean, I'm gonna have it on a bit, because I feel like it just kind of opens everything up a little more. So roll the gain back. So it'll get a decent amount of hair on it if you want.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you can step on that. So he just stepped on the G2 pedal, which is our kind of lowest gain of the G series pedals. So that's the sweep on these. So that's gain boost. The pre-post switch, you're not really gonna hear a difference right now because of the way we're running this, but what this does is this will actually defeat the power section in the amp. So if you're running it direct to front of house and you don't want the 6v6 power section, you can just send the preamp and then simulate power amps within the 2-note software. So you're not gonna
hear it here, no.
No, not really, because we're not running the software, so you can't hear us change any of those. And then 5 watts and 25 watts is pretty self-explanatory, but let's kick it down. So it's gonna be So now we can push the snot out of it. And now we're getting like actual power section breakup instead of just preamp breakup. So, which I'm never really a huge fan of wattage switches on stuff. I always like all of our amps I find are voiced well and the volume controls are actually useful. It's not like on a Fender, where on a lot of them like 0 to 1.5 is like loud, and then from 1.5 to 12 is like minimal difference.
Yeah.
Here there's like a really good sweep and like taper on the volume pots. So it really only becomes useful if you really do want to get that power section to break up and get that type of gain. But yeah, and then speaker load, which if I hit, it's going to howl at us because we're going to hear it right out of here, but that's how you defeat the speaker. And that's it.
There you go.
It's got an effects loop. All the other fun toys, weighs 31 pounds, so it's not crazy heavy.
Fit it in a big backpack.
You bet. And that's it. So price and all that is on our website. So I won't bother talking about pricing because people from Canada and all over the world watch it, and it's different prices in different areas because currencies change. So, you know, all that fun stuff. And yeah, let us know in the comments what you think. As per usual, yeah, I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's been kind of a long time that we've talked back and forth about, you know, how do we do something or what could we do besides this? Because the idea for the Golden Age podcast, I can't remember if it came before. Like we've talked about doing like gear stuff like this for a long time. I can't remember if it came before or if it came afterwards that, yeah, we talked about doing a collab.
I don't remember.
I don't either.
Yeah.
But we did it.
But here we are.
Here. Yeah. So,
collabing in podcast form and amp form.
Yep. So, and another, yeah, whenever this comes out, which will be just after the amp comes out, I bet, drop us a comment and let us know if you've watched other videos on the Joey Landreth Edition. And, you know, who are your kind of favorites of people that we sent them out to do videos on? I'm curious to see
who
you liked. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't wait to see who does them.
There's going to be some fun people.
Well, I know this goofball's going to do some.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in, folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
We will catch you next time.
Yeah. See you next week.